Welcome to the deep dive. We've been getting some really interesting sources from you all about how modern life is really hitting us, biologically speaking.
Yeah, it's a hot topic.
It really is. So, today, let's dive into that. We're focusing on the neurobiology of modern stress, the mission, to unpack the key insights from the research, figure out how today's unique pressures are, messing with our brains and bodies.
Right.
Because that whole fight or flight response, it's ancient, it helped us survive. But what flips that switch now in our world, that's the interesting part.
It absolutely is. And what's so fascinating is that the core system, it's this, well, brilliant evolutionary design for,
Yeah.
say, running from a lion.
Right. Immediate danger.
Exactly. But modern life, it throws this constant stream of different kinds of challenges at us, and our body's still using that same old playbook, fundamentally.
Okay, so let's get under the hood then. What's the basic biological setup for this stress response?
Okay, so fundamentally, you've got this rapid two-part system. First, there's the autonomic nervous system, the ANS. Acts almost instantly.
Super fast.
Super fast. It's got two sides. The sympathetic, that's your classic fight or flight,
Yeah.
gets the heart pounding, blood moving.
The accelerator.
Precisely. And then there's the parasympathetic system. That's the brakes. It brings you back down, back to a stable state, homeostasis.
Homeostasis, right, that baseline balance.
Yeah, think of it like your body's thermostat, always trying to keep things just right. The parasympathetic system helps get you back there after the stress is over.
Got it. So that's the immediate zap. But there's more to it, right? A kind of slower, more sustained reaction.
Exactly. For that quick burst, you've got the SAM axis sympathoadrenal medullary. That's what pumps out adrenaline, epinephrine, and some cortisol too, but from the inner part of the adrenal gland, the medulla.
For acute stress.
For acute stress, yeah, that immediate jolt. But for the longer haul, dealing with stress over time, that's the HPA axis, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal.
Okay.
This is more like the body's neuroendocrine command center. It handles the hormonal adaptations needed for extended periods of stress.
So the HPA is built for resilience, but
But in our world, where everything feels constantly on, it can get stuck in overdrive, chronically overactive. And that, well, that can cause a whole cascade of issues downstream.
right. Okay, this sounds complex. Where is this all being managed in the brain? What are the key players up there?
It is intricate. Think of the hypothalamus as like the main control center. It senses the stress, signals the pituitary gland.
Okay.
Then you've got the amygdala. That's the brain's smoke detector, basically. Super fast threat detection, sometimes before you even consciously know it's happening.
The fear center.
Kind of, yeah. Then the prefrontal cortex, that's crucial for the top-down control, trying to reason, regulate the reaction.
The rational part.
Trying to be rational, yes. And the hippocampus helps put stressful events into context, links them to memories. The whole limbic system, really, is involved in processing the emotional side of it all.
And cortisol, that's the big one we always hear about. That comes in via this HPA axis chain reaction.
Exactly right. The pituitary releases ACTH, which is the signal to the adrenal glands, specifically the outer part this time, the cortex, to release cortisol.
Okay.
And here's the twist. Cortisol, initially, it's super helpful. Mobilizes energy, sharpens focus, gets you ready to
Oh,
cope.
adaptive.
Very adaptive. But if it stays high for too long, that's the problem. Some research suggests chronic high cortisol can be, well, overstimulating for the brain. It might even increase seizure risk in people who are susceptible.
Wow.
And there's evidence it can physically change the hippocampus, that memory center. It can cause dendritic remodeling. Think of the branches on a neuron shrinking or changing shape.
Affecting memory formation.
Exactly, making it harder to learn and remember things properly.
So something designed to protect us can actually sort of turn against us if it's constantly engaged. It's not just if we feel stress, but how long it lasts, the pattern that matters, doesn't it?
Absolutely critical. The timing, the pattern of cortisol release makes a huge difference. Short, sharp bursts of stress. Totally different physiological impact compared to that chronic, low-level hum of stress so many experience daily.
Which, yeah, brings us right to the modern world. It feels like we're just bombarded with stresses our ancestors, couldn't even imagine.
And what's key here is that a lot of modern stress isn't about immediate physical danger, is it? It's about our mindset, how we interpret things.
Ah, perception.
Yes, there's the transactional model from Lazarus and Folkman. Basically, stress happens when we see a situation as tough or overwhelming, and we feel like we don't have the resources to handle it.
So it's less the event, more our take on the event. That makes sense. I mean, I can feel stressed just thinking about a deadline, even if I'm safe at home.
Precisely. And modern thinking patterns, things like perfectionism, or always assuming the worst outcome, catastrophizing,
Well,
they can trigger the exact same physical stress response. No lion needed. And that amygdala, the threat detector, it can get fired up by subtle social cues, ambiguous situations at work, stuff that isn't life or death at all.
oh, tell me about it. Scrolling through social media, seeing everyone's perfect lives, that can definitely do it. And the constant connection,
Yeah.
always feeling like you're on.
That perpetual connectivity from technology, it creates this um, chronic low-grade stress. We're juggling work, study, family, finances, those notifications pinging constantly.
Yeah.
Our stress systems rarely get a proper break. That parasympathetic system, the rest and digest one, it doesn't get a chance to fully restore balance.
So cortisol just stays high.
Often, yeah. Chronically elevated cortisol, other stress mediators too. It's like the body's stress thermostat gets stuck on high.
It feels like our baseline stress level has just crept up and up. And it's not just the massive crises, is it? It's the little things, too, piling up.
Exactly right. We definitely have major stressors, losing a job, relationship changes, big stuff. But the research really points to the cumulative whack of those small daily hassles too.
The drip, drip, drip.
That constant drip, it creates a real neurobiological burden. That's the idea behind allostatic load. It's the wear and tear from being chronically stressed.
Ah, okay.
So even if you're materially comfortable, if the demands just keep exceeding your ability to cope, stress becomes chronic. It can be damaging.
So what actually happens in the brain when this becomes the standard state? What are the sort of tangible neurological effects?
Yeah, this is where the research is pretty clear, unfortunately. Prolonged stress leads to measurable changes. Brain structure, brain function.
Like what?
Well, neuroimaging studies show things like reduced gray matter volume in the prefrontal cortex.
The thinking part.
Right. And the connections between the prefrontal cortex and other areas can weaken. This directly impacts our executive functions, attention, planning, impulse control.
That absolutely tracks. When I'm really stressed, focusing is harder, making decisions feels heavier.
Exactly. And the hippocampus, as we mentioned, it's really vulnerable. That cortisol-induced dendritic remodeling, it can genuinely impair learning and memory formation. These physical brain changes can really underlie the cognitive fog people feel under chronic stress.
And it's not just the structure changing, is it? It's the brain chemistry, too, getting thrown off balance.
Oh, absolutely. Chronic stress messes with our delicate neurotransmitter systems. For instance, studies show chronic mild stress can lower GABAergic activity.
GABA, the calming one.
Yeah, the brain's main inhibitory neurotransmitter.
Mm-hmm.
Helps quiet things down. Less GABA activity can mean more anxiety, feeling hyper-aroused.
Okay.
Stress also impacts glutamate signaling. That's the main excitatory neurotransmitter. So that crucial balance between excitation and inhibition gets disrupted.
Wow.
And those key pathways, like the connections between the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex that help manage emotions,
Yeah.
intense psychological stress can functionally impair them.
It's all just so interconnected, brain structure, chemistry, emotions. And you mentioned the immune system is involved, too.
Definitely. Stress and immunity are locked in this tight two-way conversation.
Yeah.
Acute stress might give the immune system a quick boost, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, short term.
Yeah.
But prolonged HPA axis activation with all that cortisol generally leads to immunosuppression, makes you more vulnerable.
Okay.
And this neurobiological link is a key reason why psychological stress is tied to physical health problems, altered inflammation, getting sick more often.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of why there are strong epidemiological links between chronic stress and things like heart disease, metabolic issues, even faster aging.
This is all, pretty eye-opening. So where's the research heading now? How are we trying to understand this better, maybe find ways to intervene?
Well, the research is getting much more nuanced. We're realizing different types of stress matter. Physical versus psychological stressors, they engage different brain networks, and duration is key. Acute stress might briefly enhance some cognitive functions, but chronic stress usually impairs them. Even the HPA response isn't simple. Like chronic mild stress might lower GABA activity, but some studies suggest chronic severe stress could, paradoxically, increase it. It's complex.
So definitely not one size fits all for stress effects.
Yeah.
What about treatments? Any breakthroughs in counteracting these negative impacts?
There's a ton of research, but it's tricky. For example, drugs that block cortisol glucocorticoid antagonists, they've been looked at for anxiety, depression.
Right.
But they run into issues, side effects like immunosuppression or the body compensating by pumping out even more stress hormones. It's a tough system to target. Same with blockers for CRF, another key stress hormone. They looked promising in animal studies, but caused significant side effects in humans.
So no magic bullet yet.
Not yet. It really highlights how complex these systems are. And it suggests that maybe the timing of any intervention is crucial. There's growing interest in chronobiology, thinking about our natural daily hormone rhythms, like cortisol's cycle, that might be a smarter way to develop treatments down the line.
And it feels like some people just, handle stress better. What about those individual differences?
That's a huge piece of the puzzle. We know now it's a mix: genetics, early life experiences, personality traits. They all shape our individual stress response.
Not nature and nurture.
Exactly. That interplay between protective factors and vulnerabilities, especially from childhood stress, can really affect long-term health, mental and physical. It explains why the same stressor hits different people very differently.
Right. Okay, so to kind of wrap this up, the big picture seems to be that modern life, with all its unique pressures, is constantly pinging these ancient stress response systems. And our biology just isn't really built for that relentless long-term activation.
That's the core takeaway, really. We've talked through that dual-axis response, the SAM and HPA, the key brain areas: hypothalamus, amygdala, prefrontal cortex, hippocampus.
Cortisol's double-edged sword.
Right. And how modern life amplifies it all: our mindset, technology, daily hassles leading to that allostatic load, and the real neurological fallout. Changes in brain structure, function, neurotransmitters like GABA and glutamate getting disrupted.
Plus the immune system connection, and we touched on how complex interventions are and how much individual differences.
Exactly. It's a multi-layered picture.
It really gives you pause, and it makes you think, given how deep these biological responses run, how ancient they are. What small shifts, maybe in how we perceive things or just in our daily habits, could possibly help nudge our systems back towards a bit more balance in this, well, relentlessly modern world we live in.